বৰঠাকুৰ IAS একাডেমি প্ৰস্তুতি আৰু অধ্যয়নৰ নিৰ্ভৰযোগ্য ঠিকনা বৰঠাকুৰ IAS একাডেমি।
Hello everyone, this is Funny. Welcome to Bhurthakur IAS Academy. This is our daily Hindu analysis class for 21st September 2021. Let us begin with the first article for today. COVID-19 vaccine export to resume. This article is related to our Vaccine Maitri initiative, where we supplied poor and underdeveloped countries and developing countries vaccines for free and sometimes through the COVAX initiative. But before going into that, let us understand what the COVAX initiative is. Now, the COVAX program is a program which is led by Vaccine Alliance Gavi, GAVI. Along with it, the World Health Organization is involved, and also the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, CEPI, along with UNICEF and various other manufacturers, vaccine manufacturers to be very specific, and along with it World Bank and other institutions along with countries. To repeat, the COVAX is a global initiative that involves Vaccine Alliance Gavi, the World Health Organization, the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, and UNICEF, vaccine manufacturers, and World Bank and nations. Together, this forms the COVAX program. What is the intent or the mandate of the COVAX program? It is to ensure equitable distribution of COVID-19 vaccines globally. One of the things that we observed during pandemic, or at least in the process of vaccination or inoculation of people in respective countries around the world, is the vaccine divide between rich countries and poor countries. We saw rich countries hoarding millions of doses of vaccine despite knowing that they don't need that many vaccines in their possession, meaning they had vaccines more than what is required to inoculate their population. In the case of United States, they had twice the amount of vaccines or doses of vaccines that they needed to inoculate their 100% of the population. So, in order to address those issues, the COVAX program was initiated, right? What are the goals of the COVAX program? The COVAX program intends to vaccinate nearly 550 million people, that equals to 8.52% of Indians' population by the end of 2021. Have they reached this goal yet? The answer is a bit of yes and no. We personally studied during various classes, at least in the initial stages, how difficult it has been for countries like India to gain access to raw materials, not only raw materials but also to vaccines. That is one thing. Imagine if that's the case with India, which is the largest vaccine manufacturer in the world, then imagine the scenario and the condition in poorer and underdeveloped countries. Now they intend to vaccinate 550 million people by the end of 2021. Now the idea is, under the COVAX program, 2 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccines are to be purchased or to be received as donations from other countries. Primarily it is through purchasal, right? They had a budget of around 6.2 billion or 6.5 billion dollars, out of which countries were contributing money to that pool, and the Covaxin would use that funds to purchase vaccines directly from vaccine manufacturers, right? Covaxin has also agreements with Serum Institute of India to purchase 200 million plus doses of AstraZeneca's Covishield vaccine from India. Not only that, they had agreements with Pfizer, they had agreements with Moderna, they have agreements with Johnson & Johnson and many other vaccine manufacturers around the world. But the challenges of getting access to vaccines still remains, and the challenge of vaccinating the the developing nations still remains a challenge. But nonetheless, the COVAXin initiative or the program tries to address that inequitability by ensuring equitable distribution of COVID-19 vaccines. Right. Now let us move on to our Vaccine Maitri initiative itself. So, what were the reasons that we stopped the Vaccine Maitri program? The deadly second wave that swept India. That was the main reason we were exporting vaccines in a significant manner prior to the breakup of, or the prior to the dawn of second wave or the deadly second wave in India. Now we are at the tail end of the second wave. There are some after effects of second wave, but nonetheless we are mostly out of it. Given the current scenario, given our rapid increase in vaccine capacity or increase in manufacturing capacity of vaccines, remember India recently achieved a feat where we were able to vaccinate 1 crore people for 2 or 3 days consecutively, meaning that our vaccine basket has also gone up. But it is not diverse yet. We are still vaccinating people with 3 vaccines at any given time. One is the Sputnik, the other is the Covaxin, the third is Covishield. So despite that, our vaccination drive has ramped up significantly, where we are able to achieve numbers like 1.2 million, 1.2 crore, 1 crore vaccinations per day. Given this scenario and our ability to have more vaccines available to us, Indian government decided that we are going to resume the export of COVID-19 vaccines under its Vaccine Maitri program as a way to fulfill its commitment towards the COVAX initiative. Right, when our health minister was saying that, he made a statement called Vasudhaiva Kutumbam. Vasudhaiva Kutumbam is a Sanskrit phrase that is found in the text Maha Upanishad, right? Maha Upanishad, you have this Sanskrit phrase. So you'll find that in Maha Upanishad. What does that mean? It means the world is one family. We are saying that we have resumed, or we will resume our Vaccine Maitri, because we believe in the ethos of Vasudhaiva Kutumbam, which means the world is one family in Sanskrit. Where do you find this line? You find it in Maha Upanishad. Now, the surplus of the vaccines that are being used to fulfill India's commitments towards the world, right? This is our commitment to fight or unite against COVID-19 virus. We are putting up a united fight or a unified fight against COVID-19. As a part of our unified fight, India is committing to supply the surplus vaccines that is available to us. Right now, more than 100 crore doses would be produced in the coming quarters, that is October to December, which are, though India requires those vaccines, but nonetheless, with the scale up of production that we have been able to achieve at this point of time, we have room for some percentage of those vaccines to be exported through the COVAX initiative. Now again, here during the announcement, there was a highlighting of the importance of indigenous research and production of COVID-19 vaccines. Just imagine a scenario where you don't have the COVID-19, or you don't have the Serum Institute, or you don't have the Bharat Biotech Covaxin, right? Just imagine a scenario. What would be the devastating effect of absence of those companies or those vaccines in India's fight against COVID-19? Let us assume at any point of time Sputnik would have come in, or Pfizer would have found its clause taken away, but nonetheless, the indigenous aspect, the indigenous production capabilities that India possessed certainly helped us tide over the crisis that we are in right now. But the caveat here is, the area where India lacks right now in capacity building or capacity is indigenous research. Though we happen to be the largest vaccine producer in the world, the largest pharmaceutical producer in the world, India does not carry out the research that leads to that kind of innovations. This is where we need to invest more. This is where we need to fund more research, right? This not only happens through private sector, at least in the initial stages. To kickstart the entire revolution, the government must put up a lot of money, a lot of capital into private R&D. For the first time, India saw a government paying advance to a private company for something. That is where Indian government made 3000 crores or something like that available to private vaccine manufacturers. If that is done in a more regular way, in a more heightened way, hyped way, research would definitely kick off in our country. Not only we would be the largest of producers of pharmaceuticals in the country, in the world, but also the best research facilities and research output nation in the world too. That is the dream that we have to aim for. We have to develop indigenous research capabilities that leads to innovations that can be taken advantage by our production capacity. This is the Vaccine Maitri initiative. We are again resuming vaccine export that had to be ended because of deadly second wave in our country. Moving on to the next article, fund and faculty count in higher education rankings. Now recently the 6th edition of National Institutional Ranking Framework for Higher Education was released by the Union Ministry of Education. Now this ranks 100 top universities in India, and out of 935 universities you have 100 top universities announced by the National Institutional Ranking Framework for Higher Education. Now when you say rankings, university rankings, though there are many advantages for having such rankings, for announcing such rankings, there are certain caveats that need to be carefully ascertained. Now what are those issues? Now not only the National Institutional Ranking Framework is one ranking, there are other rankings that are announced yearly or few years in between, which are the academic ranking for world universities, Times Higher Education, and the similar such rankings, right? You have rankings that are being announced every year or few years in between. So rankings give you a lot of advantages. How? They'll help students in identifying top universities, right? They not only do that, they also provide faculty an opportunity to work or to find best universities so that they can render their services. What is the third advantage? You have private companies that are looking to hire young graduates from universities, right? You have campus selection drives that take place in engineering colleges everywhere in India. So when you have your college that is ranked higher in such rankings, such recognized rankings, companies are more willing to go to those colleges to conduct employment drives when compared to non-ranked universities or non-ranked colleges. So that is also an important factor, right? If your college is ranked higher, the potential that a big company like Google, like Tech Mahindra, like Zoho, all these Indian conglomerates or Indian magnates would come to your college or you come to your university and recruit students directly. That is one of the biggest advantages of having your college ranked higher, or at least ranked in these kinds of educational institutional rankings. And the biggest of all, as I said, it will help students to choose institutions. It gives them the perspective to choose better institutions that deliver on quality and content. What is the second? This is from the perspective of the students, the faculty, and the potential employer perspective. What is the second perspective that we have to look, or that would come out of these rankings? It promotes competition between institutions. One year you say your competitor has been ranked higher than you. You work hard all this year and ensure that in the next year rankings you are put a rank above, or at least a few ranks above your competitor in that domain. Now, what is the outcome of it? When one institution is ranked below the other, the below ranked institution would certainly try to improve its overall quality so that they get better ranking next year. At the end of the day, who are the winners here? The students, the employers, the faculty are the winners here, because the institution is trying to better its quality so that it gets better ranking, so that it gets more students, so that it gets more private companies coming to their campuses for employment drives. Not only that, it attracts best faculty around the world to their institutions. So it's a both way street, right? You have improving the quality ensures good ranking. Good ranking ensures better students, better faculty, better companies coming into it. So that's a two-way street. That is advantageous for both of them. It's a win-win situation. Now these are the advantages of it. But when we have most useful outcomes of rankings, there are some areas that are being ignored by institutions in their thirst to get better ranking compared to their competitor institutions. What is that? When you have issues in your institutions, right, that led to you being ranked at lower numbers or lower areas, the area where you have been lacking, instead of improving that, instead of proactively working to overcome those deficiencies so that you ensure quality and you promote excellence, institutions are using parameters that are used to measure or used in ranking, and they are only improving those parameters and are neglecting the others. Let us say you have a parameter in the ranking. Let us say you take the Times Higher Education ranking. Times Higher Education ranking measures institutions in 7 to 8 parameters. Let us say they measure in 7 parameters. One of the parameters where they look for quality is the number of faculty in your institution. Let us say if your institution has 100 members of 100 professors, assistant professors, 100 strength of faculty, you are awarded 7 points, right? Or 8 points. Let us say 10 points. If your institution has 100 teachers in your university, your institution gets college, your institution gets 100 points. But you have 98 or 99 or let us say 50 teachers or 50 professors, you are getting low marks awarded to the same. So in a bid to get that 10 points from the Times Higher Educational ranking, what universities tend to do, this is assumption by the way, what universities are trying to do is, instead of going out and finding best faculty to be appointed in their institutions, just to get that 100 number, they are recruiting anybody and everybody they are finding in their path. So instead of improving the quality, only the number has gone up but the quality has not gone up, because in their bid to get that number 100, they are not looking for the quality of the students or the quality of the faculty that they are getting. Hope I was clear. To make it a little bit easier, in a bid to get better rankings, what universities are doing or what institutions are doing they are looking at the parameters on which they are being judged, and they are only working to better those areas and forgetting about the rest. So instead of ensuring quality and promote excellence, they are doing the exact opposite of it. They are only concentrating on things that matter to rankings and forgetting about the rest. So the author of this article is saying, what is the point of having few islands of excellence surrounded by a sea of mediocrity? Right, again, you have few institutions that are doing the excellent job and the rest are okay. They are not good, they are not bad, but okay. Again, that doesn't bode well. When you look at this percentages, 2 or 3% are the top universities that are actually excellent, but the rest 97% are mediocre. So what would be the output of students coming out of the mediocre institutions? The highest. India cannot afford that kind of mediocrity right now. India needs excellence. India's growth depends on excellence in youth, excellence in quality of education. That is how we develop as a nation. So these rankings, though they are helping in one area, they are doing a disservice in the areas of utmost importance, which is quality and promotion of excellence. Now, what are the ways that universities attain excellence? They can do it by contributing in the areas of research, publications, patents, and innovations. So, these all things involve a lot of critical thinking, a lot of investment, right? A lot of support, and we know what is the situation in our universities, even the top ones. And we also have, I think we have also gone through what is the state of research in our country, what is the state of publications in our country. Now, in the just article, in the previous article, we discussed why India needs innovations in pharmaceuticals. We need to we need to have indigenous patents, indigenous innovations, indigenous research in the fields of pharmaceutical. That is not only limited to pharmaceutical, that extends to all sectors in our economy. That is how growth happens. Now again, how do you attain excellence? We must make seminal contribution in areas of research, in areas of publications, patents, and innovations. That is what universities also must be doing. Now let us come back to rankings themselves. You have the ARWU ranking, right? This ranking ranks a university solely on the basis of their research performance, whereas the Times of India rankings and the QS rankings accord 60% and 20% weightage to research respectively, where the Times gives 60% for your research and the QS gives 20% weightage to the research, and the NIRF accords 30% weightage to research performance and professional practices. So what is the parameter that they are measuring universities and institutions on? Their research performance. You have ARWU that measures universities on their research performance. You have the Times one which gives 60% weightage to research. You have the QS one which gives 20% weightage to research, and you have NIRF which gives 30% weightage to not only research performance but also to professional practices. So the highest percentage of marks or weightage is being awarded to research performance. Let's look at the NIRF 2020 rankings themselves. That rankings are the most kind of an eye-opening numbers for everybody involved in educational sector. See, the best university in the country scored 92.16% on research performance. Hold that number in your mind. The best university scored 92%. Now let us look at the second best university or the next best universities in the top 10. From 1 to 10, the 10th best university in India scored 60%. What was the number that you heard for the first university, the top university in the country? It was 92. Now come down just 9 places, not even 100 places, just 9 places. The 10th best university in India scored 60% for their research performance. That is a drop of 40%. Just imagine the level of quality that has been reduced from the first topmost institution to the 10th best in the Indian subcontinent. The 10th best, not even the 100th, the 1000th, the 10th. If you go down below 10, the scenario is even scarier. When you look at the 20th and 50th best universities, they scored 50% and 28% respectively. And when you come to the 100th best university, it comes down to as low as 4% in research performance. See, earlier you saw the quote, right? What is the quote? Few islands of excellence surrounded by sea of mediocrity. The island has only one university in the top, which has 92%, and from 10th, forget about mediocrity, they are not even coming to that levels. So that is a scary thing to have in our country, when your top university scores 92% and your 10th best scores just 60%, and your 100th best university scores 4.35%. Mind you, this is in out of 935 universities. 1000 universities, let us say you have 1000 universities. This is the 100th best university out of 935. And just imagine the case in the rest of 835 universities in our country. See, if institutions have higher rankings, it is very advantageous for them. Why? Most of the universities that have higher rankings in these kinds of surveys or whatever the rankings, generally they get benefits from government and they get benefits from private players, and there is a greater chance that they get autonomy, meaning they become autonomous. They can act independently, they can launch distance education courses, they can launch postal courses. And not only that, government funds them for research, supplies funds for research and development. Not only that, private companies also do come and instill R&D labs in the university. The advantages for universities of having better ranking are far higher than for them to not have a ranking at all. So it is in their best interest to get high ranking. Despite that, the decline from the top institution to the 100th institution in India out of 935 is staggeringly 88%. So what should be done? So the best thing to do is the fund and faculty method, right? The fund and the faculty method that is being neglected, right? Mostly neglected areas are very critical for research, right? You need to ensure you are not only teaching the students, you are teaching them to think. Look at the parameters we discussed. What are the contributions that universities make to attain excellence? Research, publications, patents, and innovations. All of those things need two important components. One, funding. Two, faculty. Institutions are not investing in those two things, which are the most important of rest. You can do away with not having a proper computer lab, but what you cannot do away with is having a qualified faculty to teach those students. So universities are majorly centered around dissemination of information, but not on critical thinking. Critical thinking has to be fostered. Critical thinking means you promote research that leads to publications, that leads to patents, and that leads to innovations. Once your research performance goes up, which is supported by faculty and which is supported by continuous funding, your rate of publications, your rate of patents, your rate of innovations significantly goes up. So these are the important areas that are to be concentrated on but are being neglected right now. So these are not only critical for research performance but also for overall ranking, because these two bear a high degree of positive correlation. That is what I told you. You do one thing, you get the other thing. You do the other thing, you get the one thing. So that is the NIRF ranking. That is the issues with Indian ranking system. Not only the ranking system, but the way that universities are approaching to those rankings. See, the rankings are fine. They are according 60% weightage, 30% weightage to research performance. The problem is what universities are doing to attain those rankings is what is problematic here. Hope this has been clear to you. Thank you. Stay safe. Namaste.
বৰঠাকুৰ IS একাডেমি প্ৰস্তুতি আৰু অধ্যয়নৰ নিৰ্ভৰযোগ্য ঠিকনা।